Welcome to Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Chapter 13 of the Tale of Genji, Akashi. We'll start with our usual summary for shared context. Akashi continues from Suma without a break. We rejoin Genji at Suma as the fierce storm continues to rage. Genji receives a messenger from Nijo and learns that the capital too is besieged by a storm, though circumstances at Suma are much worse. The entire household offers prayers, and after Genji made vows to many gods, the storm redoubled and lightning struck, setting fire to a corridor adjoining his rooms. Everyone retreated to the kitchen. Finally, the storm abates. Genji sees that the tide has rushed nearly to his door. He falls to sleep and dreams of his father, the late emperor, who tells our exiled prince to get in a boat and leave Suma. Before he disappears, the apparition tells Genji that he will go to the capital and speak with the emperor about him. As dawn arrives, so does a boat. The Akashi novice has come and asked to speak with Yoshikyo. At Genji's urging, he went. The novice explained the instructions given to him by a strange being in a dream and the divine wind that brought him there. Yoshikyo relays his message, and after weighing his options, Genji asks the novice for refuge and goes down to his boat. Genji arrives in Akashi via the same divine breeze to find it more populous than Suma and altogether more beautiful. The novice had many finely constructed buildings strewn from beach to the hills, each charming and refined. He had moved his daughter and her mother higher up the hill and gave Genji the mansion at the shore. The decor inside and the gardens too were just as lovely as anything in the capital. Once settled, Genji writes to various people in the city. The novice gave Genji space, but they slowly build a rapport. While he mentions his daughter, he does not press. Meanwhile, his daughter, the Akashi lady, learns of her parents' plan to arrange her marriage to Genji and finds it preposterous, as her rank is so far below his. Genji spends his time at religious devotions. One night, after playing music together, the Akashi novice took an opportunity to bring up his daughter's musical talents and at long last broached the subject of a relationship between his daughter and Genji. He begins a correspondence with the lady the next day. Meanwhile, in the city, on the 13th day of the 3rd month, the same day as the lightning strike, the late emperor appeared to Suzaku in a dream. He awoke wanting to send for Genji, but his mother dissuaded him. The minister of the right, the emperor's grandfather, dies. His mother becomes ill, and he begins to suffer from an eye malady. Back at Akashi, Genji begins courting the lady, but she refuses to yield to him. Genji continues to visit her, though only sporadically, as he gets caught up in guilt over Murasaki, to whom he confesses the affair in a letter. The emperor, still suffering, pardons Genji, and after the 20th of the 7th month, issues a decree summoning Genji back to the city. The Akashi lady was now pregnant, and Genji felt torn about leaving her behind. He finally hears her play the koto and vows to send for her as soon as he can. As a memento, he gives her the koto that he had brought with him into exile. With an astonishing amount of gifts of clothing and other items from the novice, Genji returns to the capital, pausing at Naniwa for purification, and sending a messenger promising to make a pilgrimage to the Sumiyoshi shrine as he had vowed during the storm. He is restored to rank and given a new position. He visits Fujitsubo, the heir apparent, and the emperor, but to Hanachiro Sato, the lady at the House of Falling Flowers, he sends only a note. What a change of fortune for Genji. Reading through the translations for this chapter, I continue to be disappointed with Suematsu. 5 more chapters, and we no longer have to worry with his truncated translation. I do find Waley less enjoyable than the latter 3, and for the ease of reading, Seidensticker and Washburn are in a dead heat. I'm still most partial to Tyler, but Washburn is a very close second. We have minor translation differences between what an instrument is called, biwa versus lute, and sono koto and kin versus a koto of a certain number of strings, but there was actually a similarity in this chapter that caught my eye. When Genji begins his courtship via correspondence with the Akashi lady, all of our translators frame it as a contest of wills, the lady not wanting to yield due to her inferior station, and Genji, wanting her to yield to him. This makes me wonder what the phrase in Japanese is that so easily translates to contest of wills. Which leads me to a thank you. One of you lovely people watching was actually kind enough to send me a suggestion of a version of Genji that includes a highly regarded modern Japanese translation along with the English. I appreciate the suggestion. I'm intrigued and will likely get a copy to further my research and spur me on to study Japanese with more discipline so I can eventually read Genji in modern Japanese. I also want to be able to speak Japanese so I can be a respectful guest when I finally get to visit Japan. And it's an open secret that I have a long, far-off dream of studying enough to be able to decipher the script of the original text. I know calligraphy is hard to read, especially that old, so like I said, it's a long, far-off dream. Do you have any really long-term goals like mine? We speed through almost a year and a half in this chapter, but there's really only one major seasonal reference I'd like to call out. Not long after Genji arrives at Akashi, the 4th month ensues. Suematsu erroneously calls this April. It would actually be May. The 4th month brings with it a change in dress and furnishings to welcome the season. Genji receives new robes and silk curtains to hang around his bed. In Liza Dalby's Kimono, Fashioning Culture, in the chapter on Heian colors, we read, "Summer officially began with the 4th lunar month, May in the modern calendar, the time to put away lined robes of gloss silk and take out translucent gauze-woven silk called Ra." Unfortunately, our clothing references are rather skimpy in this chapter. There is a messenger, the one Genji sends his morning after letter with, that is richly rewarded with the gift of either one or a set of women's robes. And at the end of the chapter, the Akashi novice provides Genji and all of his men with new traveling robes. This would be the ubiquitous hunting cloak and gathered trousers, a karaginu sugata, along with chests full of clothing. He is leaving at the beginning of the 8th month, definitely having returned to the capital by mid-month, so this travel happens in the 2-week period in which a woman's robes would have stiff edges. The cuffs of the sleeves would be starched and turned back. This is not mentioned in the tale, but it's one of those little tidbits that deepens the story for me. I know that the Akashi lady and her retinue would be dressed according to that custom. When Genji went to see her at an earlier hour than usual, so that he might see her more fully before he leaves, having only ever seen her in the dim of moonlight, she would be in these stiff-edged robes for the fall season. This being a full set of robes, as the beginning of the 8th month, modern September, marks the return to wearing full numbers of robes. Likewise, Genji arrives back at the capital around mid-month, when another change in robes occurs. Murasaki and her entourage would follow this change, and instead of stiff edges, the robes would now be made of a different weight and type of silk, unpadded raw silk. Sometimes it's the things in the periphery that capture my attention. For this chapter, that was imagining what the women were wearing despite being told nothing about it. One last example. When the novice is speaking about his daughter, he tells Genji that for 18 years he has taken her on pilgrimage to the Sumiyoshi Shrine twice a year in spring and fall. And it's here that my imagination goes into overdrive, as I'm very familiar with the traveling outfit that she would likely be wearing on this journey. I've made one. There's a link in the description below to my website, and there I share all about my project of making a Tsubo Shozoku traveling outfit. If you'll be attending Pensik this year, I'm teaching 2 classes centered on this outfit, a Get Ready with Me as I model the process of creating a mid-Heian noblewoman impression, and the second, Pilgrimage and Power, exploring why women like the Akashi lady went on pilgrimages. That one is taught while wearing the traveling outfit. Don't worry if you're not going. I plan to record them both for a bit of bonus content here. Was there anything that drove your imagination in this chapter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for Chapter 14, Myotsukushi, Channel Markers, or Pilgrimage to Sumiyoshi. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through the tale of Genji.